So, welcome everyone to this Yin and Yang Yoga session with myself, Anthony, this evening. I'm actually going to be doing this more in the Yin aspect today, to try and get a little bit more softness and passive stretching into the neck and shoulder area. Now, for this, you might want to grab yourself today a towel, if you have one available. If you don't have one right now, maybe you run and grab yourself one, or maybe you can even use a pillow from the couch or something like that. That can also be quite useful for the session. And with that one, you might want to have it on a kind of rolled up, elongated sausage, not too thick in terms of its structure. So it's not going to make too much of a difference to the structure of the body, but something that will give you a little bit of support in one of the postures we're going to do. So then I'm going to move that towel just to one side, somewhere where I can maybe grab it at some point. Now for this beginning part, we're going to start sitting onto our shins in a Virasana, hero's position, but balancing here onto the shins. And I'm going to use a brick here underneath my pelvis to make me feel a bit more comfortable here. If you don't have a brick, you can use a pillow, maybe even a stack of books or VHSs if you have those still these days. I don't even know if we have them anymore. But anything that can just lift your pelvis up a little bit. And just make yourself comfortable. Of course, other positions are available. If this doesn't work, being sat like this, then feel free to come to cross-leg position. But just something that works well for you right now. I'm going to rest the hands onto the thighs. And I'm going to close the eyes. I'm going to take my focus inward. Start to elevate that capacity to feel. So we've had quite a nice sunny day today, so perhaps we have had some access to that sun. Perhaps we've gone out walking, or we're sat on a balcony, or we've been in the garden. So use that energy that comes from your sun exposure today to feed into your musculature, keep a softness, to feel that warmth, but also feel for that energetic nature of the sun that we feel after being exposed to sunlight. We often feel a little bit more energetic. Some people feel more lethargic, so just notice how you feel. I'm going to start by just taking some very subtle movements for the shoulder, just to give them a bit of movement. Now I'm going to rotate myself here to face in the direction that you possibly are on your mats back at home. So I'm going to move myself so I'm facing down towards the end of the mat there. And I'm just going to bring the arms out in front of me. So feel free to let your eyes open at this point. I'm just going to keep the breath in as smooth and as natural and efficient a rhythm as possible. I'm just going to let the arms come up. So I'm going to flex into the shoulders. As I flex the shoulders, feel the energetic lift of the body. And with your exhale, slowly lower. And I'm going to use this movement here to try and slow the breathing down. And creating more capacity for breath in the body as the arms lift. And as I exhale, as that diaphragm relaxes and comes back to its natural dome-like shape, pressing the breath out, I'm just going to let those arms sink down. Breath in, feeling arms coming up overhead. Exhalation as the arms float down back towards the thighs. You may prefer to do this with your eyes open, just blurring your vision. You may prefer to close your eyes and really tune into the feeling of the movement here in your shoulder joints. Mild bend perhaps into your elbows so that we're not locking into the structures of the arms. If we feel that this tires the shoulders, maybe just taking it a few times and letting the arms rest. Now, the next move we're going to take is a rotation. So for this, let's keep the left hand down onto the thigh. Just bring the right arm out in front, bend at the elbow, and have the elbow resting in towards the ribcage. Roll your palm a little more up to the ceiling so you get a mild external rotation in the elbow, And then we're just going to start externally rotating from the shoulder. And just hold yourself in that external rotation. So we're using the musculature around the shoulder joint here in a very soft way, not too heavy, to sustain that external rotation. And so let's bring it back across the front of the body. Just let your palm maybe touch onto your chest, your rib cage. And then we'll go again, just rotating, keeping the elbow relatively close here to the rib cage. Thumb rolling perhaps a little further out as we go to that end range in our rotation. And then bringing it back through center. Let's bring that right hand down onto the thigh. Let's bring the left arm up. Bend at the elbow and just pincer that in towards the side of the rib cage there. Rotate the palm to the ceiling and let's externally rotate left arm out. Doesn't need to go to its full range where we really feel a lot of tension or shuddering. Just somewhere where we feel a bit of muscular engagement into the tissues around the joint. And then we'll bring the hand back, let the palm just come to rest onto that right side of the ribs. And then we're going to take that again, moving out, rolling palm to the ceiling. And then bringing that back through center. And just let the arms then both come down to rest onto your thighs. I'm going to rotate to face you again for this next little movement. You don't need to move, just keep yourself where you are comfortably on your shins, maybe cross-legged. Adduction and abduction. So I'm going to bring the arms down by the side body, palms facing down to floor. Slowly, perhaps with your inhalation, arms are coming up. They may come only to a T shape, they may come more up to a V. Doesn't matter if they don't come up to touching. I'm then going to rotate the palms to face each other and slowly let the arms come down. And I'm tuning in to the movement in the shoulders. I'm feeling what's going on there. Coming back up. And just moving slowly and gently into the body. Rotate palms out. You may feel that there is that kind of feeling of almost shuddering or a gentle tickle into the body as we take these very slow movements. It's quite an energizing way to work into the body. And then rotate bring the arms back up again with the palms facing down first. Rotate. And then bring the arms down. Now let's keep those in an external rotation here with the arms coming down by the side body. So we have that external rotation with the arms adducting, so coming towards the body. We feel perhaps a mild engagement into the triceps, an opening into the chest. So we have an engagement into the shoulder region here. And then we're going to let that all go. Let it relax. Let your hands come back to rest on your thighs. Close your eyes again. Tune back in to the feeling of soft flowing breath. Now feel free if you need to open your eyes to find your way down, but we're going to come down to lay on the back surface. So I'm going to move my brick aside and I'm going to slide my pelvis to the centre of the mat, come to lay down on your back surface. Now for this we're going to have the arms overhead. Now this may mean that there's a few different alterations we need to make to this position, just to give a very soft opening to the tissues here, wrapping onto the rib cage and also coming down the back of the body here. So you've got your latissimus coming down the back, but often here stretch is coming into the serratus anterior and also the pec muscles, so those pectoral muscles. Now if you need to, if you're finding that you can't bring the arms down or the elbows are lifting a little bit, then what you can do here is you can use your towel sausage to go just behind your wrist. So that can give you a little bit of support, or maybe it's more behind the forearms or the elbows. If you feel that there maybe is more space to be had for your position, then you may want to bring the towel onto the mat and then rest that just behind the heart, around the shoulder blades, and that's going to give me an extra bit of opening into the shoulders. You may prefer to slightly bend the elbows. You may even prefer to go slightly wider with the arms. That will bring much more opening into the pectorals. But the key here is in this position that we're trying to find quite a passive release into the chest and shoulder areas. So we don't want to be having to push. We're really embracing that opposition to our more dynamic practices here by letting ourselves utilize gravity to gain the sensation of opening or lengthening, whilst my body moves into a greater state of almost relaxation. Within that relaxation, however, feel that there is still an alertness to the position. That alertness is in the energy of your body. You're still buzzing within this position, feeling how the tension changes in the tissue. So often we find that in a Yin Yoga practice we are working very passively into the body. But that passive nature of the posture and how we work into the tissue doesn't necessarily also need to be in the way we work energetically. So how can I, within this quite relaxed state, still be searching for space, for freedom? How can I still keep my breath elongated to its full capacity so I'm charging my batteries here within this position? Perhaps noticing here with that natural steady stream of your breathing, how does the breath feel in the chest? We may find that there's an easier access for the breath into the belly, but how does it feel in the chest area? So for many of us that aren't quite tight into the neck and shoulders or the chest areas, we often find that the breath is quite stilted in the chest area. So we find it quite difficult to access that freedom for breath into the chest. So just notice here with the arms overhead, as we place that sensation of lengthening into the chest area, how does that perhaps enable us to flood the breath into the uppermost parts of the lungs? And just tuning into how this position feels. And from here, I'm just going to slowly start wiggling the fingers, allow the eyes to open if they have been closing. And we're going to fall onto that right hand side here. So I'm going to fall onto the right and start to lift myself up. Now this may not necessarily be mirrored in the iPad here, in the recording, or on live stream. So feel free to just listen into the cues quite carefully. So I'm just lifting my body up. I'm going to lean now into my right arm. And I'm going to fall into that right shoulder girdle. So it's quite a lounging position here, but it's a very great stretch into that latissimus muscle, and also a little bit coming into serratus anterior a little bit, but coming down quite strong also into the obliques and side body. So it doesn't look like quite a dynamic position, as you can see, but I'm letting myself gradually melt into the position. Being careful here not to let the body swing too far forwards towards the ground. We want to keep the chest quite open towards the this flat stream in front of you here, or this flat surface in front of you. And letting the spine just dissolve into that lounging position. Where possible, however, one area of the body where we maybe want to contain a little bit is into that core stability. So very subtle engagement to support your spine. Now as I maintain this falling position into my right arm, I'm going to bend the right leg a little bit more. My left leg is going to reach out and extend, and then as I push dynamically into that right hand, I'm going to bring myself up. So I'm finding a Janusirsasana position, or half butterfly. I'm going to flex both feet back to energize the position. Now, I may prefer to move this foot, that's the right foot there, further out in front, so we don't put too much stress through the hip. So feel free to adjust that. The first position we're going to take here is a neck releasing stretch. So I'm going to sit down to the left side of the pelvis, which lifts up my bottom a little bit, and I'm going to feed the right hand underneath. The palm is going face down, and the fingers pointing towards my left foot. So I'm then going to sit onto that hand, trapping the hand underneath, and I'm going to push the heel of the hand into the floor. As I do this, I'm going to start letting my neck fall off towards that left-hand side. Now feel free to adjust if you do position your bony structures and your pelvis into sensitive areas of your hand, then feel free to adjust it, or even put your towel through there to kind of cushion the area. And then you're tuning in here to that neck and shoulder area. I'm still keeping a mild flexion into the ankles, just to keep the legs quite supported and strong here. But in the neck and shoulder, I can go quite passive. You may prefer to let the chin roll slightly down towards the chest, or that left side of the chest, if you'd like there. Let's not go vertical or upwards, however, at this point. We're going to go there perhaps in a few moments with a slightly different positioning of the arm. But I'm just tuning in here for a stretch or a sensation of lengthening into that right side of the neck. Feeling for perhaps that potential for release. Expecting nothing, so perhaps the body is quite reluctant to change. And that's okay, it's an important observation to make into the body. But just noticing if there is that capacity or gentle give into that neck area, how can we just let go to fall that bit further into the position? Now we are going to move into our next variant of this position. So for this, I'm going to move the weight back into the left sitting bone. I'm going to keep the neck quite relaxed here, and I'm going to release the right arm. Neck stays relaxed and head moving towards that left side. I'm going to circle the right arm overhead. And just doing that circle, I'm just feeling for space into the right ribs as I take the circle. Now as it comes down in front of the body, I'm going to pin the right elbow to the right lower ribs. So as it draws down there, I can already get a sensation of stretch into the neck. I'm going to roll the thumb away from the body, so I'm giving an external rotation into the forearm, and then I'm going to start moving the arm out towards the right side. Now you may already begin to feel a stretch coming into the neck area or into the chest and shoulder. Now you may prefer a little bit more movement of elbow away from the body, but keep the external rotation. Now from here, I'm going to sink those sitting bones into the floor, and I'm maybe going to start opening the chest a bit more to the sky, and maybe gently moving the chin, or perhaps the right side of the jaw to the sky. So here we're searching for a stretch coming to these scalene muscles as well as the trapezius. So I'm getting external rotation into the shoulder whilst I'm also letting the head fall to the left. Keeping the chin moving skyward, unless of course that flares up any unusual sensations or nervy sensation, in which case lessen the reach into the rotations. And from here I'm just going to slowly start unwinding. So that right palm is going to maybe roll down to the floor, take away some of the rotation in the shoulder. I'm going to bring the arm back, so that's the right arm coming to just rest on the floor, and I'm going to use the left hand here to help lift the head back up into this more vertical alignment. I'm maybe now going to draw that foot a little bit closer if I have the capacity. I'm just going to sink towards the left a little bit. I'm going to reach the right arm now, back up to the sky, and take just a momentary sideways bend. Doesn't need to be very far, it's just to get a sensation of reach through the right side of the body. And I may roll the head down towards the ground, so I'm going to relax a little in the neck, make those eyes just drop down towards the floor. And I'm continuing that reach of the right arm towards the left foot, until it finally comes down towards the floor. And then going to draw the hands back and lift the chest, bend both knees. Adjust your pelvis so you sit comfortably on the floor, then lengthen both legs out. Now here, walk your hands perhaps that little bit further back. I'm going to slightly firm into the abdomen here to help support my spine, but I'm now going to start trying to throw the mid part and upper part of the spine forwards through the ribs. So it's quite an energetic position, perhaps a micro bend into the elbows there, particularly if you are hypermobile in the elbows. But it's quite a dynamic position, a stretch and an opening here for the chest area. Options here are to maybe lift the chin a little bit if that feels more appropriate. I'm not a big fan of letting the head drop too far backwards here, as often that can put a lot of pressure onto the blood flow into the brain here. So I'm going to keep my head upright a bit more. And I'm going to breathe into that chest area. I'm keeping that mild firmness into the abdomen to protect the spine. I'm focusing in perhaps on that connection of sitting bones and that space behind my shoulder blades. And I'm thinking of separating those two spaces whilst I press the spine through the ribs. And with your next exhale, let's begin to soften the chest. Firm a little further into the abdomen as you exit the position. Let's bend those knees a little bit again. Bring your body back. Shift your pelvis perhaps that little bit further forward. And you may prefer to come down using abdomen control, or you may prefer to hold onto your shins and just roll down onto your back. Bringing yourself back onto your back surface and just letting those arms come up over the head for a second. So again, you may wish to bring back your towel here rolled up underneath the wrists. You may prefer to bring that towel again a little bit more underneath the back of the heart, so it gives you a little bit more of a higher lift as you send the arms overhead, and perhaps a mild bend into the elbows. We won't stay here too long, it's just to tune back in again to feeling perhaps the change in that right side of the neck, the right side of the shoulders. Perhaps your right arm feels a little heavier than your left. Don't worry if there is a very small amount of feeling of difference. It's important to let go of that expectation to feel large changes from your practice, and instead just take greater satisfaction in knowing that you're exploring your body, that you're gaining a greater insight into how the body is functioning. Now from here I'm going to roll this time towards the left side, so I'm just going to let those legs fall. Right arm perhaps circles overhead. I'm going to firm into the abdomen a little to help support me. And I'm going to come up towards that lounging position. So I'm going to move my towel again out of the way here. And I'm going to sink into that left hand. Legs here can be bent in this position. And or they maybe prefer to be lengthened. But I often find that having them a bit more bent just makes it much more comfortable and stable. And then I'm going to fall into that left shoulder joint. So you can see here if I'm engaging, there's spaciousness around the shoulder. But if I relax a bit more and sink passively into that stretch, you can see the shoulder lifts and I get the compression perhaps around the shoulder and neck area. And I'm just letting my ribcage melt down that inside edge of the left arm. And giving a mild firming into the abdomen to support the spine. And perhaps even giving a relax of the neck so that the chin rolls down to the floor. But I'm trying to avoid here letting the chest roll down to the ground. How does it feel here to fall through that left shoulder? Even after 30 seconds of being within the posture, we start to feel some of those connective tissues in the body start to change in their tension. And we start to allow that little bit more elasticity into the tissue. What we're really exploring in that movement, in that change in the tissue, is actually more about the plasticity of the tissue. So it's the changing or the melting of the structure so that it changes its shape. And we're hoping here that that subtle change is then going to remain in the tissue. And that's the nature of plasticity into fascial tissue. Now I'm slowly going to firm into the abdomen again to protect the spine. I'm going to press through that left hand to create space, and I'm going to reach the right leg away. Bend your left leg and flex both feet. So you're coming up to your Yarususasana positioning here. I'm going to lean onto the right side of the pelvis and rotate the palm down to the floor, sitting onto your hand, and push the heel of the hand down. And then I'm going to allow the head to fall away towards that right hand side. Just falling away as I send the shoulder down and away from the ear. I'm always trying to instigate that stretch, that opening, that search for space. And maybe I'm allowing the chin to roll down towards the right side of the chest. Perhaps avoiding lifting chin as of yet. We'll move there in a few moments. But sustain your position there, just falling away to that right side. Be careful here not to lift the heel of that left hand. Keep it pressing down into the floor. Now we're going to alter this position to come into our stretch into the scalenes. So I'm going to start by leaning into the right side of the pelvis. I have just adjusted my body here just to help you with some of that visual cueing. And I'm going to then bring the left arm out in front of the body, bend at your elbow, and then pincer the elbow into the side of the rib cage. I'm then going to rotate the palm up to the sky. So the thumb is now rotating out to the left. And as I breathe in, perhaps, I'm going to start that movement to the left, keeping the elbow towards the ribs. If you need to, your right hand can always be used as a bit of propping there behind the body. If you do feel like you're falling away from the position, you can always use that bit of support there behind you from the right arm. Now, as it comes to its fullmost extent here, without putting any unusual stretch or tension into the shoulder, I may prefer to move the elbow a little further away from the ribs. And then I'm going to continue that journey of rolling the right ear towards the right shoulder, gentle rooting down of the sitting bones into the floor, and perhaps an opening of the chest and the throat to the sky. Feel how that then shifts the tension into those scalene muscles coming down the sides of the neck there, perhaps still hovering a little bit into trapezius, but it definitely does, with that rotation aspect, it brings it more into the front surfaces of the neck. So it's a great one to go for those of us that do have that tension that often pulls the head forwards, to loosen into these tissues. That tendency often comes when we do a lot of desk-based work, or we're curved over our table or over our telephone a lot. Perhaps for those of us who are a bit slouchy in our posture, perhaps a bit lazy at times, and fall into a habit of relaxing into the curvature of spine. Noticing for when you feel that very subtle change in the tension of the tissue. And let's begin the exit. So rotate the palm down towards the floor perhaps. Bring the hand a little bit more across the body, perhaps down even onto the floor, resting on your left ankle. Now bring your right hand to the head and use that hand to help lift you back up here to a more neutral position. So bringing the head back up, I'm now going to bring the hand down to the floor on the inside of the right leg, or perhaps on the outside, whichever works best. I'm going to circle that left arm up and over the head, and I'm reaching out into space, getting that slight wrap from the shoulder, and the reach is going towards the right toes there. And that gentle search for space is going to help bring me further forward until I can bring that left hand down onto the floor. Gentle roll up through the spine. And let's send the left leg forward. So again, I'm going to adjust the pelvis to come back to a squaring position onto the mat. Bring the hands back. I'm going to let the feet rest down, and I'm going to push the chest into the sky. Now I bend the knees here. If we prefer a slightly more dynamic posture in this position, you're more than welcome to push down through the feet, send the knees forward and lift the pelvis. Really firm into your abdomen there to support your back. So you'll see there when I'm relaxed, my belly just balloon up a little bit. But when I firm, it just brings it in a little bit. It's not about pulling the belly down to the spine. It's about firming into the abdomen, and that naturally will start to flatten the belly area. And then going to slowly let the pelvis come down, not needing to overwork in that position here today. Now from here, I'm going to cross the legs, or maybe coming around the side with the legs towards a child's pose position. Now the child's pose we're going to work with here, I'm going to have the legs perhaps a little bit wider, but parallel with the shins. So the feet are also a little bit apart. I'm going to bring the forearms down onto the floor, and I'm going to gently press those forearms into the ground. Let your forehead come down onto the floor and relax the neck. Then think of drawing the nose about extra ½ centimetre towards your belly, and then just lift the head a mild amount from the floor, and you're just hovering. Now gently press those elbows and forearms a little stronger down into the ground, and you'll feel your chest area, your shoulders, your neck all begin to engage. We're just feeling that gentle engagement, and this gives us something to then oppose. So I feel the engagement, and then take a slow, steady inhalation. And with your exhale, let the forehead come down, relax the shoulders. Remain there in that position. Just letting your forehead fall down into the floor. Let those shoulder blades melt around the sides of the rib cage towards the ground. Perhaps your elbows feeling a little bit heavier. Perhaps we even feel that there is the capacity, or it may feel better even, to let your palms roll up to the sky. So play around with those things. If you're in a little bit of discomfort or a sensation that we recognize as moving towards discomfort/pain, adjust the position accordingly. The sensation that you're searching for, particularly within a yin-based practice, is an interesting sensation, somewhere between comfort and discomfort, but certainly not going beyond discomfort towards pain. Now from here within this position, we're going to start moving into a side bend within our child's pose. So let's start by coming towards the right. Just walk your hands a bit further across towards the right side of your mat. Then let those elbows again sink into the mat. I'm going to turn my head to the right. And just see if you can rest that left cheek onto the floor. Try and work less in your shoulder area. But again, feeling that energy that comes from your breathing. So yin practice quite far this evening from going to sleep, but instead really recharging your batteries. How can we perhaps let go of even more work into that right shoulder? How does it feel to tune in perhaps to the lower body, into the legs, the knees in this position? just bring your attention back up towards that shoulder girdle. Now let's feel for the change in the tension around the shoulders as we perhaps start to just gently press the forearms, the whole forearms of both arms into the floor. And just lift your head again a little bit away from the floor. Let's rotate the head to face the ground. Maybe look towards those fingers. And then we'll start the journey walking the hands back across. You can do this with a little bit of fingertips to heel of hand movement. So just move yourself across. And then I'm reaching those right fingers that little bit further away and keeping the head lifted. I'm going to rotate to the left side and then place the right cheek down onto the floor. Your left elbow may prefer to bend a little bit and move away from the face. Gives you a bit more space there to breathe easy. How do we feel into that right side of the chest and shoulder connection? So the arms themselves connect onto your torso, onto the rib cage, only through soft tissue. There's no bony connections or adjoining attachments, apart from perhaps a small fibrous joining of the clavicle to your breastbone. But around the shoulder itself, everything is soft tissue. So how can we perhaps feel for that softening of the soft tissues to ease you into this position? Let's start beginning to press those forearms down into the floor again. Lessen the pressure of the right cheek into the floor. Bring your head to face the ground. Walk your hands back towards the center, using that same toe or toe fingertips to heel connection to bring yourself back through center. And let's gently press down through the shins. Come forward towards an all-fours position. I'm going to firm into the abdomen. A little bit of dynamic work here into the shoulders. So protraction. I'm going to press the hands down and just lift the rib cage to the ceiling. And then I'm going to relax and just let everything hang down. I'm going to keep the elbows quite long so I can fall into that position. And then again, just press down through those hands and relax. Feel for the muscles that start to switch on when we're doing this protraction. So we naturally start to feel the chest area get a little bit more involved in this movement. We feel also the muscle serratus anterior coming from your shoulder blade and wrapping onto the rib cage here, like a grip of a hand that comes around and joins onto your rib cage. So how can you perhaps tune into that feeling? And those muscles, along with the rectus abdominis and the front line of the body, is the focus of our next position, melting heart position. So I'm going to make sure that my hips are directly over my knees, and I'm going to try and prevent them from deviating forwards, which is often a habit here, or deviating backwards. I'm going to keep them fixed on top of my knees. I'm maybe going to tuck the toes. That can sometimes make the patella feel a little bit better, your kneecaps there. Some people prefer to be on flat on the shins, some people with tucked toes. So feel free to play with that, what feels right for you. You may even prefer to bring your towel here underneath the kneecaps, and that can feel quite nice and less strenuous or bruisey onto the knees. But then from here I'm going to walk those hands a little bit further forward. I'm again going to enter the position quite dynamically, so I'm going to press down through the hands, try and get that protraction feeling as I start melting forearms, backs of upper arms towards the ground. Now you may even find that you can bring the hands a little bit further forwards, maybe even lift the nose and place the chin down onto the floor. Don't worry if that doesn't work. Forehead on the ground is a perfectly good option. Maybe even placing your towel or another towel here underneath your forehead. If you'd like an extra challenge here into the arms, if you feel that they're quite loose here in this position, you can tuck the fingertips underneath and lift the palms. So I'll demo that for you now. You're going to tuck the fingers and lift the palms and lengthen through the elbows. A little recommendation there for that one: if you ever have dislocated shoulders or have very loose shoulders, I would not recommend pushing too hard into that position and overstretching the shoulders. So just work in a way that brings interesting sensations into the tissue, but doesn't overstretch. Often if we are hypermobile in those shoulders, the sensation that perhaps we're searching for will be slightly different from that of lengthening or elongating, but rather stabilising. And in which case you can find the stabilisation by not working to the end range of the movement, but instead hold yourself away from the full depth of your range, and then try and suspend in that place. Perhaps giving an extra bit of press down through your hands. An added advantage here to this melting heart position is a release of the spine. It's a great decompression for the spine, particularly for those of us who are sensitive to flexions in the spine. Absolutely going to start energizing through those arms. If their palms are lifted, let's slowly float them down. I'm going to press through the elbows, the forearms and the hands to maybe release the chin. Then I'm going to bring those hands a bit further back underneath the shoulder area. Now, having worked into those shoulders for a stretch, let's also bring back some dynamism into those shoulders. So I'm going to press through those hands to lift myself back up and protract to engage those tissues. I'm then going to untuck the toes and bring myself back. Come to a seated position for a second there, just resting onto your heels, let the shoulders melt down. Done a lot of work there folding forward, so just let the blood come away from your head. We are going to come to a more dynamic position again in a moment, in inversion. So this inversion is known as downward facing dog. I'm sure we're all aware of it. So what we're going to do from here is just bring those hands forward, somewhere underneath the shoulders to begin with maybe. Then I'm going to press the bum into the sky and then throw the pelvis backwards in space. Now, following all that dynamic work into your shoulders, you may find there's a lot of space now in this position. So what the challenge here is in your down dog is not to then go to that end range, but hover somewhere where you find that there is the capacity to keep protracting, growing into the shoulder girdle. And just feel your way into your down dog. The legs can be bent here, so we're not over worrying about stressing or stretching the legs at this point. Just exploring the shoulder girdle. And then from here, bring your weight forwards towards your hands. Let your knees come down into the floor. Move the legs to one side. Now we have slightly different options here for a slightly different curvature of the spine. So I'm going to roll onto my back. And option number one is to just come to a happy baby and draw the feet overhead for a moment, just to give yourself a little bit of curvature to the mid-spine. If you prefer something much deeper, arms can reach further overhead. Reach with the toes and try and stroke your toes along the wall. Now you may find that brings you up into a version of a shoulder stand here, not needing to worry about vertical. Perhaps even your legs can find the floor and you can soften the knees for a snail position or a halasana plow. And just breathing. We won't stay here too long. It's quite a strong position. And slowly reaching those arms further away from you, rolling your way down. Doing happy baby, release the feet. And just let your legs slowly find the floor. Keep the knees bending. Now keep your arms overhead, but make them feel as comfortable as they need to be. So maybe widening, maybe bring back the sausage towel underneath the backs of the wrists, and let's let your legs move away from you. A star-shaped position in Shavasana. Close your eyes. Allow your body to be absorbed into your mat, into the ground beneath you. Release any hold from your neck and shoulder area. Shavasana being an opportunity here to process, or for the brain and the body to process the information, for your mind and for your attention, it's an opportunity to explore, to perhaps even drift. And as we settle into that freedom of distancing from the body, can you perhaps direct your attention to your breath? You may find, following a slightly less dynamic practice, that your breath has really calmed down into its most efficient state. How does that efficient state differ from how we breathe in our daily activity? How can we perhaps try to bring our breathing into this state throughout our daily lives? Reminding ourselves that our understanding of the word of fitness is to have the breath in its most efficient state whilst allowing the body to do more. Let's start to wiggle the fingers. Let's start to reawaken the body. Wiggle your toes. Slowly bending into those elbows, and just let the arms slowly creep down by the side of your body. Reach the fingertips towards perhaps your toes to reach towards your fingertips. So you're flexing into the feet there. Then let's roll onto your right hand side, curling yourself up, using the abdomen firming into the core stability as you bring yourself up, but relax the neck. How can we come out of the ground with an efficient, balanced engagement into the neck and shoulder area? Bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, perhaps cross-legged, perhaps sitting on your shins, whatever feels most appropriate for you. Maybe even take a momentary shoulder roll or two when you come to your seated position. And use that little moment of assessment. How do we feel different in this shoulders and the chest area? Let's bring the hands together in front of the heart. And thanking yourselves for joining us in practice this evening. And have a lovely remainder to your evening. Thank you all very much. Namaste.